YouTube page. So my name's Ajarn Ken. I'm a native English teacher from Scotland in the United Kingdom, and I specialise in helping university graduates prepare for interviews with multinational companies. And today we've got Andy, our joint co-host Andy. Andy, you want to say a quick hello?
Hi, everybody. How are you?
And we've got Michael here, Michael Lavers. Is it Lavers? I've never said your surname, Michael.
Lavers. Everyone says Lavers though, but it's Lavers.
Right.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Michael.
We've got Michael from Level Up English, who's got a fantastic podcast and well known on the Instagram channels. Yeah. So we've got the three of us, and this is the Three Teachers live podcast, and it's answering questions that we all get sent to our Instagram and Facebook accounts, etc. So hopefully you're going to get three different perspectives on various things to do with English. So today's topic we're going to be looking at is all about resources. How are you going to learn English if you have no one to speak to? The big thing, you know. I always get questions like this. I don't know about you guys. It's because we're pretty lucky, we live in an English-speaking countries, or majority of what we do. And a lot of students, they don't have anyone to speak to, and they feel a bit kind of left out about learning English. They're having to kind of prepare on their own, etc. So today's podcast is all about that. It's all about what can you do if you're going to be learning by yourself. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So let's
introduce ourselves a little bit, for those that are new over here. I think that it's a good idea to introduce ourselves. Hi guys, I'm Andy from Andy's Everyday English. I am a certified teacher with 14 years experience, and I'm specialized in training students, especially from the ESL, meaning like second language learners, for the Cambridge exams at the moment. And also I am a speaking coach for those that are interested in practicing their business English. So hi there.
Business English and exam English as well.
Yes, exam preparation, specifically at the moment Cambridge exam, because right now I'm based in Europe, and apparently Cambridge exams and the IELTS is kind of like the hot stuff here. While if you are, as any product, but if you, for example, are thinking about like Canada or the US, probably the TOEFL is more the certification that you should invest your time and money in.
Excellent. Michael, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, I do. Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Lavers. As Ken said before, I've got the podcast Level Up English podcast. That's my main focus these days. I'm on Instagram as well. I'm from the southwest of England, and I've been teaching for about 7 years now. That's probably it at the moment, yeah.
Whereabouts in the southwest are you? Is it Cornwall, right?
Yes, grew up in Cornwall, yeah.
So I always find this fascinating. In the UK, we all speak English, right? But in certain parts of the UK, we have different languages kind of thing, right? And in Scotland, we have Gaelic and we have the Scots language. Down your neck of the woods, I believe, do you have like a kind of a Gaelic language down there? You have a Celtic language. That's the word I'm looking for. Is that right? How many people speak it down there?
Yeah, so we have the Cornish language, and it's very similar to the Welsh language, which is more widely spoken up there. But I don't think anyone speaks it as a first language anymore, not for hundreds of years. And I think the people who are learning it probably is less than 1,000. It's not many people.
Oh, really?
I'm one of them, but I'm still a beginner.
Are you learning it? Are you?
I'm trying to, but it's quite challenging. Yeah.
What's the name of the language?
Just Cornish, or if you want the proper name, it's Cernoic.
All right, Cernoic. All right, okay. So, as part of that language, went into the English language, and
I was also interested in that. As far as I know, it didn't really. It just kind of got replaced by English. I don't think there are many words that have integrated,
Right.
it's kind of disappeared mostly.
All right. The reason I'm asking it, when I'm learning the Scottish Gaelic
Oh, excellent.
language, and I'm very much a beginner, but right at the beginning, there's a Scottish Gaelic word called cheery, and it means goodbye, like cheerio. So the Gaelics kind of came into use within the British English kind of, there's the vocabulary's kind of moved over, into, because I guess down in England you say cheerio as well for goodbye, don't you?
Yeah, it's just a
Kinda,
very
yeah.
British thing to say. Yeah.
Guys,
But
may I ask you guys a question?
yes.
What inspired you to keep on learning this languages that for some would be, for example, not that practical? Because right now it's all like, oh, if I cannot use it for my job, or if I cannot add it to my CV, what is it for, right? So what inspired you to go back to the roots?
Go back in time,
Yes.
kind of thing. Michael, what about you?
Yeah, I'd love to hear your opinion, Ken. But I think for me it was, I don't expect I'll ever really use it in my life. It's not really a useful language. It's just about learning about the history, connecting to, I guess, the local culture a bit more. Kind of makes me feel more connected to my ancestors, I suppose, rather than just spawning randomly in the
So
country.
it's your ancestors, your kind of heritage, all based in that area.
Yeah, there's like ancestry websites. I looked it up, and on my mum's side, it goes back at least 500 years in
What?
Cornwall. So I feel quite Cornish.
My God. So, all right. So, learning the language is actually bringing your kind of history up to the present time.
Yeah. It makes me feel more connected, to the past.
Yeah. Excellent. I started learning it because I was ashamed that I didn't. Because, I speak a couple of languages conversationally, and I thought, why am I not speaking Gaelic? And so I just got Duolingo out, and I started, doing it 20 minutes every day. And in Scotland, the Gaelic language was kind of kicked out, and English was replaced. A bit like the Cornish language, But they're coming back. In Scotland, we have like road signs and government kind of buildings have the Gaelic language on it, like train stations, for example. And I thought, let's go and see what's all involved. Kind of get an aspect on your history, like what you were saying, Michael. So it's really kind of interesting, Andy. It's just going right back to getting a grasp on your history. I know people in America, etc. Their history is very, very new. But ours is going back.
Relatively, I mean, like, hello, almost 600 years. Like new. I don't know how new is that. Young, we can say.
Young, yeah. I mean, America's what, 1776? Was that the date of independence or so?
Yes,
something like
exactly.
that.
But we go way back.
Way back? How far back?
Yeah, far back. But
really?
Speaking of this kind of languages that a lot of people might seem that they're not so useful, here, for example, in Spain, where I am currently based, it's really interesting because, for example, here they have communities, yes, like Comunidad of Madrid, Catalonia, Valenciana, all those things. And it's really interesting because, for example, they teach it in schools, and for me and for example, you can enroll your child in like they will have the subject like the main language, which is here is Spanish, but if you're interested, you can also enroll your child in Valenciano or Catalan.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And it's really interesting because, for example, if you want, and this is like strictly related to work, if you want, for example, like some specific jobs, like for the government, you have to speak the language. You got to be
Really?
like really proficient in the language. So
Wow.
I think that this is kind of a way to keep it alive, which I
Wow.
think is interesting. It has its handicaps, of course,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think that it's interesting, like in a way to keep the language alive.
Live, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
I think it's
You
awesome.
know, in Scotland, we have the Scots language, which is like an old Germanic language, Northern Germanic language. It's like a sister language to English. And if we spoke with a Scots dialect at school, you know, we would get into trouble. You know, they would, why are you speaking slang and stuff? You know, and
Oh, wow.
we were, you know, in some schools they would beat it out of you. You know, so we weren't allowed to keep it alive. But thankfully, it's coming back into kind of fashion now. You know,
Yes.
so great. So excellent. So let's have a look at what we're going to talk about today. So when we get lots of questions in, and lots of English learners, they kind of feel isolated when they're learning. You know, I know from I stayed in China for a while, and everybody wanted to learn, and we set up an English cafe in one of the cities, and on a Friday night at 7 o'clock, and the place got crammed out because everybody wanted to come to this cafe and learn to speak English, you know. But if someone doesn't have anyone to speak to improve their English, what do you think they should do? Now, I know we all speak a couple of languages. I speak a couple. I know Andy speaks fluently bilingual or trilingual, I think. And Michael, you've learned to speak a couple of the Asian languages as well. You were learning to speak Chinese at one point.
Yeah, I'm still trying.
Are you still trying, are you? So how would you want to improve your language if you don't have anyone to speak to? Michael, what would you say?
I mean, as you two probably get a lot, I get this question quite a lot. And the first thing I always reply is, first of all, you know, maybe it's obvious, but try to find someone you can speak to. I know that's not the question, but because we do have the internet in most places around the world, you can use that to find language partners and teachers if you can afford them as well. But let's say for some reason you cannot get any of that. Speaking is obviously going to be the hard thing to practice, and I think in that case, one thing a very specific thing I found really helpful is just like a daily practice of recording yourself. Like it could be like an audio diary, right? So record your voice, talk about what you've been doing in the week, your plans for next week. You don't have to send it anywhere, but I just think the fact that you're practicing and getting your voice out there is definitely better than nothing, for sure.
What do you think, Andy?
Michael stole my idea. I was going to say about recording yourself. I'm kind of like, no, he already said it. You know, the thing is that when you record yourself, first of all, you're going to be a little bit surprised because you're going to sound like, this is how I sound. Because it is definitely a different experience when you're just speaking and you think that you sound in one way, but when you record yourself and you see where you stress the words, how, for example, the melody of the sentence goes up and down, you can actually take that recording as a sample, so how you can make it even better. So if your main idea is to improve your speaking on your own, like you have nobody to talk to. Also, another idea, and I know that for some, this is really, really an uncomfortable one, but it's golden. Like practice in front of the mirror. For example, when I, take off my hat as English coach, as exam certification, like tough stuff, I go and put on the hat like, okay, let's work on business English. For business English, especially when we're talking about presentations, it is really important that you have a better control of your body language, and like you can by speaking in front of the mirror, you can see how you use your hands. If your position, your body position is if you're slouching, if you are, like straight, if you look as if, because maybe in your mind you feel confident enough, but maybe your facial expression doesn't match to the feeling. So remember that when you are speaking, when you're trying to communicate, it's not just whatever comes out of your mouth, is everything that accompanies that. So we humans tend to say a lot more with our body language than what we actually do say with words. So I think that, while you're thinking about improving your speaking, don't forget to take care of the other communicational aspects of that interaction. I don't know.
How do you know? How do you know what you should be doing with your body language, etc.? What? I mean, if you're going to be watching yourself in the mirror, how do you know that the gestures you are doing are going to fit into what you're wanting to say, Andy?
Well, usually I always speaking if we are we have to understand the context where we're going to be in, especially because if I am going to give a presentation and it's just going to be me and the audience, I have to know my audience. Are there going to be cultural aspects that I have to take care of, such as, like, there are certain expressions that are definitely not recommended if you are speaking to a specific audience. For example, this is my Italian heritage, but I gesticulate a lot and I move a lot, and I have to cut it down sometimes because I can find myself doing this, kind of like, yeah, but
what does this mean? What does this mean with the hands and a kind of your fingers are all clamped together at the top?
This is life, okay? This is life. No, I'm kidding.
This is life.
When Italians do this, it's kind of like, well, what are you trying to say? Or I don't know. It's a feeling.
Right.
I really don't know how to express it, but it's a feeling. But knowing your audience, I think that is knowing your audience and being prepared about what is it exactly that you want to say and do you want to communicate. It's kind of like a killing combo. I don't know if you guys, teach that in your sessions, if you accompany that.
Michael, you said there that you're going to practice speaking. What sort of things should people be practicing speaking? Is that right? What sort of things should people practice? What sort of things should people practice speaking? Got my gerunds there mixed up.
You mean when recording themselves? Is that what you mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Because
this is what a lot of people say. What should I do? So if you're going to record yourself speaking, what should you be doing?
Yeah, I think it's very level dependent. So if you are a beginner, I think it's a really nice idea just to talk about. It's good practice with tenses, like today I am doing this, tomorrow I want to do this, and this kind of stuff. If you're more advanced, I think it's a really nice idea to do some hypotheticals, like if I could live anywhere in the world, I would want to live here, and just kind of answer these.
What's a hypothetical to someone who doesn't know?
That's a good question. It's a question or idea about something that is not true, but it could be true, right?
All right, okay.
Like, if I could go to space, I would go to Mars, something like that.
Is that true?
Yeah, why not?
If you all right, yeah. So it's like the conditional form, like the second conditional form, right?
And also incorporating words and grammar that you've been learning elsewhere in your studies. Like if you had if you're studying grammar and you're learning about the conditional form, let's say with if, then try to incorporate that into your speaking as well, or whatever writing or whatever else you're doing.
I recall when I was learning Spanish, I think I've maybe said this story before. I used to get a book, the newspaper in the morning before my breakfast, and I would sit and for 10 minutes I would just read the newspaper, but I would speak out loud because I was very, very shy when I was like everyone, I guess. Like when you're learning a new language, you don't want to make a mistake. You want to think, oh my God, am I going to really be stupid here, sound really thick and stupid. But I was very much like that. I was very nervous. And so I used to get the newspaper in Spanish in the morning and have my toast and my tea, and I would just start speaking in Spanish, whatever it said. I didn't understand what it said, some of the words, vocabulary, I had no idea, but I just wanted to speak, me llamo Ken, yo tengo 20, and I would speak Spanish for 10 minutes. And I didn't know if it was correct, but what it did do is it made me a little bit more confident, because I always think when you're speaking or practicing a language, it's like going to the gym. You're kind of exercising your language skills, So I felt that I got a lot more confident with it. And then I started going on to like small books, started reading Spanish, but I would do it out loud. And it kind of really improved my Spanish. With your Chinese, Michael, how do you practice your Chinese if you've got no one to speak to?
Not very well at the moment, but say if I've got no one to speak to, I mean, I do some speaking these days, but what else do I do? Well, one thing I find really helpful is lots of summaries. So every day I try to do, I try to do a bit of reading. I've got like a graded reader that I use.
What do you mean reader? What do you mean by that?
Graded reader is a book that is designed for learners. So it uses a more limited amount of vocabulary. It's not super advanced words, and it's kind of words that you'll be using in daily conversation.
Right.
And it's a somewhat easy story. It's not too difficult. So I find that very useful. Do a little bit of reading a day.
How do you, because Chinese is obviously the languages, it's not intonational. What is it? It's got
tonal.
Tonal. That's the word I'm looking for. So it's a tonal language, right? So how do you know that you're pronouncing those words correctly? For example, in when I speak Thai, Thai's got 6 tones. So to say the word rice would be cow, but if you went cow, 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 this all means 6 different words. It can mean white or news, etc. So how do you know what you're saying is correct?
I've just started learning Thai this week, actually.
Oh, really? Have you?
I've just got to the tones, and it looks much harder than Chinese already. It might not be, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, if you're reading Chinese, there's no way of knowing tones. It doesn't tell you. You have to memorize every word and the tone. But perhaps the same as Thai. I'm not sure, because Thai has a different alphabet. But you have kind of the Latinized version of Chinese where you can read
the karaoke version, they say.
yeah
They call it karaoke. It's they have the Latin language at the bottom. If you go to karaoke in Thailand, it's very popular. Same in China, I guess. They have the Thai language, and also they have the karaoke version, which is the Latin script underneath.
Yeah. So you can do that, and then in Chinese above the Latin script, it will have the accent above it, the punctuation that shows you what tone it is, but you have to kind of memorize that. And if I'm not sure, I can put it into Google Translate, and that will also tell me the tones.
Yeah, I believe it's called the pinyin system.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, very knowledgeable, Andy. I like it. What is it? The pinyin?
The pinyin, because the pinyin system is like really interesting for us Western, cultures, and that we have a very specific alphabet. The pinyin is a really lifesaver, and it helps us to give it more sense, because it's a way to phonetically learn how to read or to say that character. So it is actually really interesting, the pinyin system. But then everything comes with a little bit of a handicap, because whatever it is that you do that may help you in a way, if you get used to pinyin, then when you're in front of the character, you're like, what is that? Because then phonetically and by ear, it's kind of like, oh, I understand everything, and you can have a conversation, but then when it comes to reading, you're absolutely lost. So if you're driving and you're gonna be lost. That's the end of the story. So what I would say is that if you're, like learning a new language, in this specific case, that is like with characters, like it is really important, of course, because the idea is to speak. Wonderful. But don't
Mhm.
forget to kind of like accompany it with the character itself. But when it comes to English, it's not so crazy that advice either, because
Mhm.
our language is really interesting as well, because it's not phonetic. It's not phonetical. I mean, a lot of my students, they always complain. It's kind of like, why are you doing this to me?
What do you mean it's not phonetic, Andy? What do you mean by that?
It means that whatever it is that, to put it plainly, whatever it is that you read, it definitely might not be what the way that you pronounce it, how you
Right.
spell it. It's so for those that, for example, are starting to learn the language, or they're even like in intermediate levels, don't get discouraged, because that's one of the reasons why, and of course that because it's incredibly irregular. It's one of the most irregular languages out there. So
Is this like this here, the GH sounds at the end?
oh my goodness,
It's not phonetically what
you're
it seems,
I thought that you liked me. I mean, honestly, why do you why are you doing that? Honestly, I mean, especially for those that are dyslexic, or like have any learning
Yeah.
disability. Dear Lord, it is so hard. So, for
Mhm.
example, if you pronounce it, could you boys give me a hand and pronounce it for me? The first one.
Michael,
I
through.
mean, I'm notoriously bad at th sound, but yeah, through.
Are you through? Do you say an F sound or a T or a th sound?
I say F out
Yes.
of habit, but I'm trying to say
Mhm.
th and practice more because I'm a teacher now.
Yeah.
You have to speak
But for
properly.
example, from the student perspective, if they're going to read it, like for instance, a Spanish speaker or Italian speaker or Portuguese, they're gonna be like thorough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then it's like a different word if I'm talking about the first one, and not to mention number two. How do you boys, like read that one?
Tough. Tough.
Because because you're the teacher. That's what they tell me. You know that because you're the teacher. Tough, right? But in their case, they're gonna be like tog.
Mm.
Yes.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
what solution? Go to the dictionary, and especially the formal ones. I do like word reference. I'm a big fan, but
Mhm.
the name says it. The apps is called word reference, and it helps, but
Mhm.
not all the time. So go to formal dictionaries, and usually they do have a section where they help you with the pronunciation,
Mhm.
and they can even give it to you in different accents that might
Mhm.
help.
Uh-huh.
And I think that, of course, let's not open a can of worms here with the accent thing, but it makes you closer to the accent that you would like to achieve, let's say.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good.
Very interesting.
Excellent. Through
We
tough
try.
thorough.
We
Through,
try. It's the point is
yeah.
not only to look pretty here. Okay.
Brilliant. So, Enhance, how do we improve, in a nutshell then, how do you improve your English if you don't have anyone to speak to? In one sentence, Michael.
Talk to yourself and record your own voice.
Excellent, Andy.
Nothing. He stole my idea again.
I knew it.
Now let's move on. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's go on to the next one. So the next one is, I know what I want to say, but it doesn't come out what I want or how I want. How to improve this? How to improve this? You have everything you want to say in your mind, and in your mind you sound like a complete native speaker from Cornwall. But then when you come to say it, nothing comes out the way you want to do it. One of the big problems, and I always call this blank brain syndrome. You know,
Mhm.
you're ready to say it, but your brain and your tongue don't connect.
Yeah.
So, how to improve this? How to get it from your brain out your mouth? What would be the number one something that you can say. I'll start this one, right? Because this is something that I kind of always try and help my students with, especially when they're preparing for interviews in English. They have to have set stories that they want to say and they want to make it believable, not just repeating like robot fashion, but actually putting some feeling into it. I always tell my students to, whatever you want to say, whatever conversation you want to have, you have to kind of practice it. If you just want to do something off the cuff, like with off the cuff means to do it without any practice, it becomes nearly impossible because your brain is maybe 3 seconds behind and your mouth's 500 miles an hour and you're not coordinating your brain and your mouth. I always say that you should kind of practice and have it prepared what you want to say. So I'll give you an example. I was, as I mentioned before, I was learning Spanish, and I had to make a phone call in Spanish, and I was so scared, and it was for an apartment to rent, and I saw the sign for rent, and I thought, what am I going to say here? I was sweating buckets. I was really panicking, I thought, I'm going to lose this apartment. So what I did was I went away and I wrote down a conversation, a dialogue, what I wanted to say, what I would say first, what they would say, and then the conversation would go. For example, it would be, buenos dias, how are you? I'm fine, muy bien, gracias. Y tú, how are you? And blah, blah, blah. And I did this and I wrote down a conversation till I got to the end. I want an apartment to rent. Okay. How much is it? Blah, blah, blah. And I would have this two-way conversation. And I practiced it for 24 hours, And so the big day came. I picked up the phone, or my mobile phone. I didn't have one of these old phones. I picked up my phone and I just started. And I just bit the bullets. I just did to bite the bullet means to do something really uncomfortable, but you do it. And I did it. And it was much easier than what I thought because I was well prepared, So in answer to this particular question here, how to improve what you want to say, it all comes down to preparation. Consider yourself an actor. An actor doesn't go into the movie without knowing the lines. And when you're learning a language, think of yourself as an actor initially until you get the confidence to do it. That would be my advice. What would you say, Andy?
No, I was thinking about what you were saying about confidence, and this is especially like to give it a little bit of a turn of the question, like, okay, what happens if it catches you on, like with your guard down?
Off guard.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of people actually, when they plan, as you said, which is the best advice, like always be prepared, like scouts, right? But what happened when you are caught off guard? Here is where people panic. Oh, by the way, they're saying hello from Egypt.
Yeah, hello.
People from Egypt. All right. So the thing is that what to do? In my case, can you go back to the question, please? Because I lost my thoughts. This happens very often.
You lost your train of thought. Yes. Blank brain syndrome. You just suffer from blank brain syndrome there, right?
Or as we call it in the US, a little bit of a brain fart here.
A brain fart.
Yes, I know. It's not very pretty, but that's how we call it. Here, okay, so you know what you want to say, but it comes out, oh, okay. Yes, in this case, sometimes when we want to say something fluently, and this happens regardless of the language, regardless of your level. I don't know if you guys agree. Happens to natives. It happens to all of us. And it's because, for example, like what happened right now to me, that I lost my train of thoughts. And because maybe a lot of things are going on up there. So my advice would be slow down. Slow down. Slow down, take a deep breath. Because, for example, in my case, this is something that I have learned to do recently, like a couple of years from now, because I am usually a very anxious person by nature. And I'm always kind of like very hyper, like, yeah, let's do this. And I'm kind of like, I was that kid.
Enthusiastic.
Well, if you want to call it that way, but I was that kid in the classroom that it was always like, yeah, let's do this. And like, teacher. Yes, I was that kid. So slow down,
Uh-huh.
especially if you want to, um, especially in business environments, slow down.
Mm.
If you want to sell something, the pause, it has power, to pause and to enunciate your words. It really does add some power and let the other party, like the other person, actually understand what is it that you're saying, like to digest
So,
the message.
Andy, you're talking there about pausing. A lot of people will feel uncomfortable. They'll feel that if they stop speaking,
Natural pause. I
it'll
mean,
be like an awkward silence. How do you overcome that feeling of having this awkward silence or not having this awkward silence?
well, sometimes I do let awkward silences, be there. I think that we have to be okay with awkward silences because sometimes it's better not to say something that it's stupid. And I'm
Uh-huh.
sorry, but that's how I feel. Rather than, because, for instance, I am a big fan of small talk because without small talk, we cannot get deeper talks, right?
Mm.
So, sorry, guys, real life. Hello, we are live. And I forgot about that. But anyways, when we're talking about this kind of situations where you are in a, and again, I lost my train of thoughts. Honestly, this is why we have to turn off our phones. Yes. So what I
Awkward
was
silences, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. When we're in the middle of awkward silences, we have to learn how to be okay with awkward silences. Because if
Mm.
you think about it, instead of that, why don't we think of asking better questions?
All right. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Also giving the others, the opportunity to actually also express themselves and to be okay with it, like to enjoy the moment, or just to, if you're going to comment about something because you're really uncomfortable about it, make it logical,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
like, for instance, if you guys are enjoying a cup of coffee, or if you're on a date, and maybe because that's everything doesn't have to be about work and business, right?
Mm.
So if you're on a date, for example, awkward silences happen very often, and we have to
Mm.
learn to be okay with that.
Mm-mm-mm.
I don't know if you guys agree with me when it comes to awkward silences, but I think that
Michael,
they're
what do you think?
Yeah. I think another point I would add is learning, I guess, like kind of filler words and phrases to indicate that you're
Uh-huh.
thinking. Because
Uh-huh.
if I just stop, if I
Oh, Michael's gone.
oh,
He's
what
gone.
a
He's stuck.
pity. Yeah. By
He's
the
just going to
way, guys,
stop.
yeah, by the way, I apologize about the phone thing. I always forget that I have two phones. I know that that's totally silly. But
I
anyway,
think, but what Michael was saying there was have these phrases ready, and I always tell my students, um, if you're waiting for something to think,
mhm,
then have this expression, and the expression is, what do you mean by that? And that way, if somebody's speaking and you don't understand what they're saying or you've missed the point, while
mhm.
you're thinking about it, the other person is going to be answering you back for your question. So you're speaking away, they're speaking away, and you say, what do you mean by that? And then
Yeah.
they will go in to explain it again, and that'll give you kind of
Mhm.
enough time to think
And
about what you're saying.
to imagine that you are, for example, in a situation where the person that you're talking to is very nervous as well, because
Uh-huh.
maybe they're not very fluent in the language either, but maybe because your personality is a little bit more outgoing. Another
Uh-huh.
way that can improve your confidence and also help the other person, because in the end, if we want to have a successful communication, we have to help the other person. It's not a monologue, right?
Yeah.
So a good way is to ask them to explain it a little better, even though you've understood it perfectly well. It
Yeah,
doesn't really
exactly.
matter. So it
Exactly.
gives them like the opportunity to be in command of the
Yeah.
situation,
Yeah.
but from a humble place, meaning not like putting them under the spot, because then you're going to break any kind of successful communication that the person will block. But
Yeah.
I think it is very nice, to ask someone if, like, oh, I don't understand it. Could you elaborate the question again? For me, it's a little bit hard to understand this or that, or I've always struggled with this concept. Yes. So I think that it's always nice to ask the other person to elaborate their answers.
Absolutely. I always think that when you're speaking a different language, it's like a game of tennis. Even when you're speaking English, it's like a game of tennis. You will hit across your point, your opinion or your point, and the other person will hit it back.
Yes.
So it's here's Michael back. So it's kind of like it's like a game of tennis. I always feel.
I love the fact that you're comparing it, with the sport, with the game, because in the end, what is important is to have fun, is to enjoy the moment where you're right now. So, Michael, hi, welcome back. What happened?
Michael,
internet.
Oh, he's gone again.
No. It's like magic. Okay, so let's move on to the question. So let's
move on. Here he comes again. Okay, so Michael, I can't hear you.
You cannot hear me?
Oh yeah, I can hear you now. There
okay,
we go.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what happened there.
That's all right. So, Michael, what were you saying about if you want to improve? You were talking about having words and phrases. Do you remember?
Yeah, I was saying if you awkwardly stop in the middle of a sentence and, like I did, and your internet cuts out, I think it's really helpful if you learn some phrases. So if I were to say, what was I thinking of? Like, oh, that's a good question. Let me think about that for a second. Or, let me think. What could I say? Or these kind of phrases, I think that makes awkward silences less awkward, rather than just stopping without any warning,
Yeah. I remember I used to be a DJ, and many years ago when I was in my early 20s, and I used to always kind of panic a little that when I'm this was the time there was microphones and you had to speak to the audience. We had records, vinyl records, etc.
Amazing.
And I always used to panic. I thought, what happens if I don't know what to say? And the guy who was kind of mentoring me in it, he said, it may sound, if there's a silence, it may sound terrible for you, but for everyone else, they don't notice it. So maybe when you speak, it sounds like a lot, but to the other person, that silence is nothing at all. So even though when you're trying to grab your thoughts, I guess don't be too worried about the silence. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's always I went to acting school as well, and this was part of it as well. Is like it's as Andy says earlier on, it's all about you kind of sometimes it's non-verbal communication can take the place of the actual words themselves as well.
Ken, you're a box of surprises. You were a DJ. I love that. I love that. I really do.
I wanted to be a musician, but I was just rubbish at the guitar and singing, so it was the next best thing, and that was being a DJ,
Oh, but no.
Best times of my life, really good. I loved it.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, next one. So let's have a look here. Let's see if I've got this big enough. Here we go. Okay, this nice wee setup here. How long does it take to learn English? I want to learn and I am patient. So this question is, they want to learn English, but they want to know how long it takes to learn English. Dun, 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 dun.
It's good that he or she is patient.
Michael, how long does it take to learn English?
I think it's like 700 days, something like that.
700 days.
Again, this is a question I get all the time too, and I always reply with, it depends what you mean by learn. Like, when do you reach a point where you have learnt English? Because it's not something you can complete 100%. In no languages, any language is an ongoing process where, I've had students before who, honestly, I feel like they're better than me at many things. Like vocabulary, they're super advanced, and yet they're still learning every day. I think there's always more to learn. if you do have a more specific idea, like I want to get to like C1 level, I want to be able to confidently talk to strangers, and you have a clear idea of what that means. Again, it's really hard to say because it depends on the person. We will learn at different rates. It depends on how motivated you are to study. So it's kind of a bit of a cop-out answer, like not really addressing the question. But what I normally say is, rather than focus on how long it takes, try to focus on enjoying the journey. I think that's
enjoying the journey.
yeah.
But when
nice
you're learning though, is the journey not like a bumpy road that you're going to think, oh, get me off this? You know, it can be one of the hardest things in the world to do, to enjoy something that's so demanding. Yeah. So how would you say to someone, you know, it's difficult to enjoy, but you can. How can you enjoy it if it's difficult? If you're because a lot of students are under so much stress and pressure to pass exams or to pass an interview, you know, or to look good in front of their peers, the people around about them. So how can you tell someone to enjoy the ride, enjoy the journey?
I think first of all, it's important to make it clear that there will be ups and downs like a roller coaster. You will have bad days. In that case, I think it's good to have a really strong study routine in place, like that habit of learning. So you're not just relying on motivation to keep you going. You've got that routine. So this morning, I wasn't really in the mood to study Chinese, but I did it anyway because it's my routine. But yeah, I would say have a think about what you could change in your study methods and how you can make it more fun. So for example, maybe you're going through like a grammar textbook every day. And I think probably for most people, that's not super fun. So maybe you could consider changing to, you know, if you like, this is what I do actually. If you're interested in travel, you could find some travel blogs in English and start reading them every day, and you're having fun, but you're also picking up some words. So I don't think language learning has to be boring, but that's not to say there aren't bad days.
Yeah, you don't want it to become tedious. Tedious means boring and a routine that you just don't enjoy doing. Yeah, yeah. What about you, Andy? How long does it take to learn English?
No, I was thinking about it, from a certification perspective, because based on what Michael was saying, that 700 hours, 900 hours, or whatever, when you are preparing for an exam, it is easier in a way to more or less have a better understanding of how long you're going to be studying or preparing for the exam. Because there is like an average of hours. And what is interesting—
What do you mean there's an average of hours? What do you mean by that?
There is an average of hours that, for example, when it comes to each exam preparation, the official pages, they always say that as an average, X student, if they complete X amount of hours, they more or less would be ready for the exam. But of course, as the word average means, is like, it really depends on the person, because in the end, we're unique individuals, right? Now, the thing is that when people get ready, for example, for exams, it's like when you're going to take a test, you got to be sort of ready for it, or right? So you have to have a little bit of a level. And for people that are learning a language, that's absolutely different. So let's make the differentiation there, because learning a language comes to learning the culture of that language. And because without learning the culture of that language, how is it that you're going to understand the language that you're learning? I know it's a little bit of tongue twister there, but I think that this is important. And a lot of teachers, I think that don't introduce it in their classes. The idea that if you learn the language, they do it as if it's another subject instead of this life tool that is really going to expand your horizons for life. So if you're going to approach learning English, or any language for that matter, it is, I think, essential to see it in that way. In order to actually get better this way, you're going to feel it as a journey and not as you're like hiking with my mom, like with somebody in your ear. Like, sorry, mom, if you're listening to this, I love you.
I was in Thailand, and I remember you're talking about the culture side of things. I remember a lot of students would come up to me and say, "Gin Kao Ru Yang," which means, "Have you eaten yet? Have you eaten or not?" And I would say, I've eaten, yes. And they would look at me, and it wasn't until later on, it was the culture that they were actually saying, "Are you okay? Are you taking care of yourself? Everything okay with you?" So I think they do it in Chinese as well. They ask you, "Have you eaten yet?" as a kind of greeting, as part of their vocabulary culture. I think it's amazing.
Very, very different, isn't it?
Oh, totally different. And they always, a term of endearment is in Thailand. When you go there, Michael's off to Thailand in August, but they call everyone fatty. It's a term of endearment, one, which is like hello fatty type thing, But at first I was shocked. It's like, why are you saying this? And it's just a term of endearment to call someone fat. If you love someone, to call them fat.
This is so interesting, because in Latin American, if you call somebody gordito, yes, gordita is kind of like, "Oh, honey, sweetheart." Yes. And I think that's lovely. I think that is so lovely. I feel like a teddy bear whenever my students call me like that. It's kind of like, yes, whatever you want.
Oh,
I'll give
gordita.
it to you. Yes. Kind of like, yeah.
I suppose in English it would be chubby cheeks. Hello, chubby cheeks type thing.
Yeah,
It's still a little bit rude, though, isn't it?
It is. I feel it.
It's not that cute. For this reason, learning the culture behind it is so interesting, because it's so important, because otherwise you wouldn't make sense to it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I think if someone's wanting to learn English and they're patient, one thing again, from learning other languages, is think of it as like you're walking up some steps. There's a meme floating about the internet, and it's somebody at the bottom of the stairs, and they move their leg up to the fifth step, and it's like how to learn English, and they go straight for the idioms rather than learning the little bits in between. And I always feel it's like have a small goal every day. So, for example, when I was learning Spanish, always remember it, my very first goal was to answer the telephone in Spanish, and all it was "Hola, buenos dias," and the name of the company, and they would say a name, Miguel, and I would say, "¿Quién es?" Who is it? And that was the first thing, My goodness, "Un momentito, por favor," and that was it. I was speaking Spanish, and it was a huge kind of boost for me, just a couple of sentences like that, having these little goals, yeah. What goals do you have with your languages, Michael? What's your goal in Chinese?
In Chinese, my main goal is just to be able to communicate with my wife's family. She's Chinese. So that's a very important one. So I think the main goal is just, I guess it's a bit different than what you're saying. That's my kind of eventual goal, my long-term goal. I guess I don't really make like short-term goals like you're saying, but what I try to do is focus on any little successes I have. So if I do, very occasionally I might say hello to a Chinese person in the street, or say, "Oh, excuse me, like I'm coming through."
Yeah.
And then they go, "Oh, you speak Chinese, so cool." Like, yeah, my wife's Chinese, and this is all in Chinese. And it's like 2 sentences, but then I'm kind of, I'm so proud of myself. I'm thinking about it all day, rather than going, "Oh, I could have done that better." I think really focus on what you did well is great to push you
absolutely
further next time. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
And can I tell you something, guys? I think
Please,
that
Andy.
this great feeling that we have is because, not really because of the language itself, but the connection that we've made.
Totally.
Language is all about that. It's about like, what is the connection that's why, for example, I always insist in small talk. Like, small talk is actually really, really important. I mean, there's really good small talk out there that can really take connections and conversation a lot further. So I think that feeling that is kind of like you're floating, I guess, right, Michael? I think that is what you're trying to say, like, la, yes, I know. It's so
I,
nice.
That's why we
I
do
was in
it.
I remember I was in Paris and I was waiting for the boat, and I'd not spoken French for so long, and I'm sitting waiting on the boat, just minding my own business, and a woman came up to me and she said something like "Vous attendez ici pour le bateau," and I'd not spoken French for so long, and immediately I responded was in French was yes, I'm waiting here for the boat, and she went, oh mercy, and she walked away, and a couple of seconds later, I thought, she's just spoken French to me, and I've replied without thinking. And it was a hallelujah moment. I was so chuffed with myself. I was so pleased. I was walking on air, you know. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah,
A little bit of
connection that you make.
something. Yeah, a little bit of something is always better than a little bit of nothing.
Absolutely. Grab your achievements
Mm.
and celebrate them, you know. Okay, so we'll move on. We're running out of time here, so we'll move on. Well, we'll take this one, last one. Which books should I read to improve my English skills? Which books? This is such an open question.
Yeah, I think that we should go like quick round. I think that Michael mentioned it before. Great readers. I would say, for example, Penguin readers. For those that are looking graded readings are, as Michael mentioned, are like specialized books for English language learners or any for that matter. And I think that these are the best option. They're not particularly easy. You know, it really depends on the level, but I think, yeah. So Penguin readers, and if you want something for free, there is a
free, my favorite word.
Yes, Oxford Bookworms Library. I will say it again. Oxford Bookworms Library, and this is a website that you can go to and you can find lots of really nice free stuff.
Oxford Bookworms.
Yes, Oxford Bookworms Library.
Okay. So let's Oxford Bookworms Library. I've put this on the screen, yeah. Oxford so you just search in Google for this, yeah? And it comes up, yeah. Oxford Bookworms. Excellent. Cool, Michael.
Yeah, I totally agree with Andy. If you can afford it, I would always recommend go on Amazon. If you have Amazon in your country, just type in English graded reader. I've seen there's so many there. But apart from that, I would say, again, very general answer, just whatever you enjoy. Like earlier, I mentioned about travel blogs. Honestly, I'm not a big reader. I don't really enjoy reading that much. I'm more of an audio person. I love podcasts. So that's why I tend to read blogs and stuff like that. As I used to kind of sit down and try to read, books in Japanese and stuff, and I never really enjoyed it. I guess the feeling of, I can read this. That was quite exciting, like that accomplishment. But the actual process of reading, I never really liked. So
you told me enjoy the journey, not the destination. You said that earlier, huh?
Do as I say, not as I do.
I do. Practice what you preach, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think whatever you do, it has to be enjoyable. You know, it has to be. Are you into food? One thing I've started doing is forums. I enjoy football. I just enjoy my own football team. I don't enjoy any other football team or anything. Because I live in a small community. So I like the forums, and I think it's really good for English learners if you enjoy football is to find your football team in the UK and go into the forums in the message boards, because you will find some fantastic vocabulary there, real life down in the dirt vocabulary, from there. So I think forums are fantastic for picking up there. Yeah.
Yeah, something like Reddit, maybe. Yeah.
Reddit, exactly. Yeah, Reddit's really good. Excellent. Okay, one more. Help me find a native speaker. Michael, quickly.
My best advice would be don't expect to find someone to help you for free.
Yes.
Because you have to be polite to people that understand, what they're getting out of it. Not everyone has the time to help. So find a language partner if you want to go the free way, where you find someone who is learning your language. So then you can do 50% talk in English, 50% in your native language. And
where can you find that? Where can you find these language exchanges?
I've had most success on the app Hello Talk. That's really
Hello
good. Hello
Talk.
Talk.
And
a little bit of a more kind of outdated, what's the word? Kind of, it looks like a bit of a dated website now, but I think it's mylanguageexchange.com.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I've met some good people on there. I think it's just a website. It's not an app.
Right.
And the only issue with that is you have to spend $5 a month membership. But what I do is I pay $5, I message someone, and then I don't join again because I've already got a partner,
That's cheating.
Well, you don't talk on the website. You generally move it off to Skype or wherever else. I think it's fine.
Yeah. No wonder the business is going out of business. Andy?
Well, find someone that actually can help you. And as Michael said, don't expect for it to be for free. And if you actually do want to improve in a faster way, just go ahead and find a good certified teacher more than
Where?
focusing on native. Platforms such as TikTok or Instagram or Facebook are really good platforms where you can find this certified teachers. Always make sure that they are certified, because this means that they not only will accompany, they will have experience and at the same time methodology, which is what is going to actually make you come through with the language and, progress with it. So that's what I would say. So yeah, basically that's it. Don't focus too much on native. Focus more on a person who is experienced and certified more than
native. Absolutely. And also as well, find some, as you say, they don't need to be certified, but if someone's on the same path as you, that's they're looking for what we call a study buddy. Yeah. You'll find them. Just ask somebody, if somebody want to be a study buddy, go to the comments on Instagram and Facebook and ask. You won't find the ideal partner immediately. You'll need to sift through, which means you'll need to go through a couple, but you will find someone. There are always people looking to have partners to practice with. Anything else you'd like? Andy?
No, we've come to an end. No.
Yes, we've come to an end. I'll just put this up here. Yes. Anything else you'd like to add to this, Michael?
I was only thinking about what Andy said about native speakers, which I think is a great point. Just my final words maybe is, like I said before, I've had students who, probably in some ways make fewer mistakes than I do in my clumsy native English, who have also been teachers, by the way. They're teachers of English themselves. So I think it's a shame that a lot of non-native speakers find it harder to get students because they're not native, even though they are sometimes more qualified to teach.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't have to be native. That would be my final
I was going to say as well, I always say that non-native teachers are probably more qualified because natives have the vocabulary, etc., but non-natives know what it's like to learn a new language, So in a lot of respects, they're above kind of native speakers, in my opinion,
if you think of it, it actually they're gonna read your mind basically, because they know what you're going through.
Exactly.
And where they can anticipate your mistakes. Something that unless that this native, I hope, certified teacher that you find out there, unless that this person is like really into the culture that, like, for example, people who speak Spanish from Spain or Latin America or Italian or something like that, if they really do understand the culture, they can help you even more than if they're just like monolinguals, right? Think about that, guys.
Exactly.
All right, I think that
we're
done for today.
Michael, I just want to say thank you. It's been a couple of years since I've spoken to you, but it's been great to see you again.
You too. Thank you. Great to meet you, Andy.
Same here.
Hopefully we'll get a meet up before you go away to Thailand. Yeah, we'll do this again. Yeah. So thanks very much for those that have been watching in, and we'll put this out on the podcast. And we'll have on the program notes everyone's contact details. If you need to speak to anyone directly, you can do. So for me, this is Ken. I'll say goodbye. Andy, say goodbye.
Yes, and this is Andy. Thank you so much. And don't forget to follow Andy's Everyday English. It was a pleasure to be with you today. Ken, have a good one.
And see you later.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Oh, Michael.